So today, y'all, we are sitting with Leah Gooch, whom I refer to as Gooch. Today's topics are crucial to life: mindfulness and breath. So why did I pick Gooch? Well, she facilitates intuitive healing classes that include yoga, meditation, writing, and Reiki in order to help individuals approach a deeper awareness of their existence. She offers the tools to mitigate frustrations and transmute anger and sadness into creative outcomes. Her website, 4minutesaday.org, which we will include in the bio section of this podcast, it references the 2-week commitment she made to meditate for 4 minutes a day back in 2016, which led to an epiphany that changed the course of her life. Leah combines ancient practices and modern techniques to facilitate tailored programs to individuals. Whether she's facilitating sessions with incarcerated youth, celebrities in Miami, or prison superintendents, Leah reminds individuals of their wisdom, accessible through self-observation. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in art education, a Master's of Science in art education, and she is a registered yoga teacher with trainings out of Peru and New York, and her Reiki Master studies also out of New York. So let's get to that podcast. However, first, a friendly reminder that this does not take place of psychotherapy and or medical advice. I am your host, Lonnie Lamb, and this is Space Invaders. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Lonnie?
I'm so good. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, do you want me to refer to you as what I call you, which is Gooch, or would you rather me call you Leah?
No, Gooch.
Okay, Gooch. Okay, so I was so excited about this because you're like one of my favorite people. And I think it's because part of my work has included you. So that's been important to me. The work that I'm doing with Fluence, they're educating me on psychedelic harm reduction and integration work when it becomes legal for me to be able to utilize any psychedelic that the government would allow me to besides ketamine. And you were one of the instructors for mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately your energy was like amazing. I remember being like, I want to be her friend. And I don't do that all the time. We're going to be friends. I knew that right away. And I sat with you, and I don't know how many hours we clocked of mindfulness and meditation in that. It was 6 days. So what, like 25 hours of at least of yoga. I did yoga with you in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would guide the meditations along with another trainer. But that's how the two of us met. And then I utilized your intuitive wisdom too in other areas of my life. So this is why I want to bring you on, because you explain mindfulness so well. And I think that taking out the fear that people have when they hear the term meditate, because I think that can be very intimidating to people. It's not always sitting with your legs crossed and your fingers together and making sounds. It's not always like that. So take it away.
But you pretty much summed it up. I teach a little yoga, teach a little meditation, and really try to be like a gateway for people into mindfulness who are not necessarily seeing themselves as a practicer of like mindfulness practices or a practitioner of these practices. But it's just such an incredible tool, and it's accessible to anyone. If you have gravity in your breath, you can do these things. And so basically you just need to be alive to do these. I started doing meditation seriously, like sticking to it and then really saying, all right, I'm going to meditate every day for 2 weeks straight. It was years ago. It was like 7 or 8 years ago. 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. 9 years ago when my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And I was dealing with my own stress, and the normal techniques I was using weren't working. And I remember always hearing about meditation being so helpful. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try it for 4 minutes a day because 5 minutes felt too long.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to do 4 minutes a day for 2 weeks straight. And I'm going to keep track of it so that every day I do it, no exceptions. And then if nothing changes in my life in those 2 weeks, then I'll just do it when I want to do it. And I'll move on to the next tool that I'll try to incorporate into my toolbox. So it was very like judgment free of, I'll give this a solid chance.
Yeah.
So at the time I was living in New York City, and I was an elementary school art teacher, which is what I like love doing. As a kid, I used to pretend I was a teacher and dress up and have imaginary kids in my classroom downstairs in the basement. And then, so I became an art teacher, and it was great. It was like how to create an environment in which children can express themselves through visual art and answer questions about themselves with visual art. And I love looking at their work. So it was great. I got to see cool art all the time.
Yeah.
It was exhausting, but I definitely got to see a lot of amazing art and learn a lot through the interactions with the children. So one day, the one little boy is throwing a tantrum, and he's not going to hurt anyone or hurt himself. And everybody else is doing their artwork. And I think I'm going to try something new, because that's the cool thing about being a specials teacher. You can just try stuff
Yeah.
because you're teaching 150 kids a day. So you're like, I'm just going to see if this works. And if it doesn't work, okay. But there's lots of experimentation. So I thought, I'm going to experiment and just stand near him, not look at him, but just be with him and let myself tap back into that meditative state of breathing in and out love, which was what my intention was when I was practicing in my room at home. So I stand next to him. He's to my left. I'm right here. I look out to the classroom, and the other students are at their group tables doing their art project. And the one of the alpha kids in the classroom looks up. He's kneeling on his chair, and mid art looks at me. What are we going to do about this kid throwing this tantrum right now? And sees me just
It stopped.
yeah, he's make it stop. I will. There's always those alpha kids in the
There's always
classroom
the
who are
alpha.
actually
For sure.
they're like your either they're gonna flip your classroom upside down, or they're gonna be the best assistants that you can possibly have.
Yes.
And they're the litmus test, because they'll tell you if your lesson's not great, because they'll
Yep.
take the attention
Yep.
of the class. So he looks at me and I look at him like, we're good. And he essentially feels my energy, emulates it himself, goes back to doing his art. And then in a second, my entire room felt like a sea of love. It was like we entered this, I felt like I was entering a non-ordinary state of consciousness. It was insane. It was so wild. And I could feel it. It was as if there was this like invisible force that was just like gently holding everyone in that room. It's going to be okay, especially for the kid who was having that tantrum. And the
Yeah.
kid that was to my left stopped yelling. He was silent. And I looked down at him, and then he just starts quietly crying. It was like he felt all that love of every kid that was like, we got you. It's okay.
Yeah.
You don't even be afraid.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, I recognized the power of meditation. And I thought, oh, there's
Yeah.
something to this whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you weren't like, it wasn't like a formal way of meditating. It was just like standing there and you self-regulating. Like you were at a place where you were calm. And that energy, like it really does send out, if you think about the vibration that we all have, it expands that vibration. So when you have one person that's putting that out and is in control of it, it can completely shift the whole feeling in a room.
Yeah,
Especially with
absolutely.
kids. They're so spongy with that. They're sponges. They'll absorb it when it's there. Adults are a little
100%.
harder. They're a little harder. We've lived life and we're a little more stubborn with our energies. Kids are very wanting to experience and wanting to feel into it all. It's usually the adults that start to shift that for them.
Totally.
So it's amazing.
Yeah. Adults are like, I don't want, they like, technically they're like, I don't really want to feel good. Because what if I feel good, then I feel guilty. Or you associate, if I have something, then that means I'm taking away from somebody else. There's actually an infinite amount, and it's just changing form.
Absolutely.
So it's that preconceived, whereas children are like, they're more connected to that universal abundance. They're more connected to that joy. So it's quicker to be able to like tap into it. So when they feel it, they're like, oh yeah, it's game time.
It's
joy time.
And they're so good about, if they're throwing tantrums, and for the adult, it can be so uncomfortable. And if we think about it from a lens of childhood development,
sorry, my dog just
mine's moving in the background too. I'm like, sit down, you're fine. You have a treat.
Yes.
Like the treat. You like it all the time. If you think about that childhood development, they will express how they feel. It's limited in how they're able to express it because of that emotional, whether it's emotional vocabulary or emotional ability to express their needs. And it's usually an adult don't act like that. Stop acting like that. Don't cry. Don't do that. Don't do that. And it's okay if we can I get it. And especially for a teacher, there's so many bodies that are having to be controlled and so many emotions. So I get that there isn't time all the time to be able to sit with each student and be like, let's feel your emotions. Like I totally, and really it's the caretaker in that child's role or in that child's world, practicing that of sitting and like describing, what are you feeling, and naming it and being able to expand their emotional vocabulary. So that day you were expanding his or her emotional knowledge and presence of himself or herself. That's That's such a gift. It's a gift that you learned, but also a gift that was received by many little people.
Yeah, I got to share it.
Yeah,
That's
for
what's
sure.
so cool.
Absolutely. I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that from there, you go into this space of, I know you traveled. That was what I was
Yeah.
fascinated about too. You've been all over the world
Yeah, I have.
training in this and getting like honing in on your skills. Like, talk to us about that.
Yeah, I've been to China, I've been to Israel, I've been to Colombia, Peru, been around, and it's and yeah, India was incredible. India was definitely like a
Yeah.
place that this kind of work is very much a part of everyday life. They were doing yoga in schools as children. So I was walking around barefoot for 2 weeks in this like beach town on the West Coast. It was amazing.
It's amazing. What is the energy like in spaces like that, where you have children that are learning how to self-regulate their emotions, or children that are learning how to sit in quiet and listen to their breath and learning how to sit in
They,
stillness?
when you meet little kids and they're just like old souls, you can just feel like they're old souls. And you're just like, oh, you're like a grandmother. And you just learn from them and like almost are able to tap into their field and sit down and be like, all right,
Yeah.
what do I gotta learn here? That's
Mhm.
the kind of energy that these children that are doing yoga in schools give off, from my impression, from what I saw.
Mm. Yeah. They're teaching us in so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if you just allow them to be themselves and express the way they need to express with a little bit of guidance, it's like how much they teach us about life.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah. I've learned a lot from my own kids. Just a lot about, and you and I have had conversations about this, but a lot about them teaching me different forms of love, different forms of way that we
Mm.
like, I, I I'm a hugger. I'm a physical touch person, and not every one of my kids is wired that way. So
Hmm.
it's like me coming into understanding that young people, like, and I refer to my own children in that way, they teach me how they receive, whether it's time, whether it's connect, however they want to connect. And that can show up in so many different forms. It doesn't always have to be like a physical touch, like a hug or a scratch on the back, or, and them inviting me into that space and me not feeling, hey, this is what you need. Because who am I
Hmm.
to say that? And I had to arrive in that as a mother, just feeling like I knew, like, I'm the mom, so I know what you need. And that's not the case. I was definitely taught by my boys, like, what they need, what their needs are. And then we grow from there as a family. But yeah, I think children are, man, they are a gift. They are definitely, I think we have a lot to learn from them. And I think that we step into these adult and parental roles in areas where maybe we don't have to all the time.
Hmm. That's
So
beautiful. And I think that meditation practices can help in
yeah.
those moments to listen to that voice of like, why is this happening right now? Why
Mm.
am I reacting so strongly to what they just said? Like, why does that just grind my gears? And if there's before just automatically reacting, creating that space just to see what comes up and
Mm.
watch the different options before choosing a reaction. I think that's what
So,
meditation is like,
so wild.
actually useful.
It's so true. It's so true. The what, like, when you said that, I think of curiosity. Curiosity is so gentle. It's like I use the example of a bird that like flies over land. I use this example all the time to help people understand. Look, you're not like a land animal creeping up on something. Be a like, imagine a bird. And I always get a laugh too, because it's like, well, why can't I be a cheetah? No, it doesn't work. Like, my example doesn't work like that. So I'm like, think of a bird, because you get the bird's eye view. You get the perspective of looking down at what's happening, and it's gentle. It's this. And when you ask, like, I love that you said that, because how many of us as parents or as caretakers or aunts or uncles or cousins that are older that have younger people watching us or learning from us, how many of us guide out of a place of fear, guide out of a place of trauma, guide out of a place of stress? Like, this happened to me, I don't want this to happen to you. It's like, where are we guiding from? So that's such an important question to ask ourselves, is like, why did what that child just did strike my heart like that?
Hmm.
What's that about? And getting curious about ourselves. And that's the meditation that I don't think people really realize is available to them. You don't have to always be in a formal setting of meditation. Like, just like you were in the class, like you were in a classroom with chaos around you until it wasn't chaotic. You centered that room. There's power in that. We all, as human beings, and our souls hold that power. And how many of us don't realize that there's access to that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we get glimpses. Some people get glimpses when people are like, oh, I don't really meditate, or there's moments where there's mindfulness. There's moments of these like aha moments, or awaking to what's actually in front of you, and the experience of being a human. And it might be brief, but there are these moments. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's amazing and beautiful, but other times it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we're programmed as like human beings to be looking for problems, to be looking for danger, to be trying to figure out what's the next thing. But then if we can just come back to, okay, I'm here right now, and be aware of that experience, we're able to uncover what's available to us in that moment.
I think when you say that, I felt myself almost ready to take a deep breath. Like, how innate in us is it for our bodies to want to regulate and be like, okay, I got this. I can handle this. We don't even realize we do it. But that actual act of taking in a breath and exhaling a breath, that is the body attempting to regulate. You know, and that was one of the things that you taught in the training. You were very breath work was very important to you in teaching us that. Do you want to talk a little bit about breath work, like why you feel let's have a conversation about breath work, why it's important.
Breath is life.
We have to breathe.
It's like pretty much life and like spirit, and began when we're breathing. That means we're alive. And so much of our breath is actually going to control our mental experience as well. So we can't necessarily change the way we think by thinking. You can't think. It's hard to think differently by thinking, like fighting fire with fire. But if you can use your breath to regulate your physiological state, then naturally your mind will be shifting. My go-to is always just lengthening, like feeling your breath. And then if you're like, I don't know how to feel my breath, just ask yourself, am I inhaling right now, or am I exhaling? There's a simple question and a simple answer you can get, and that automatically brings your attention to your breath. And the other go-to is inhaling and then making a really long exhale.
Yeah.
And I love that tool.
Yeah.
The other go-to lesson for all the teachers out there, or even like therapists, there's a book called by James Nestor. I think it's The Lost Science of Breathing, The Lost Art of Breathing, something like that. And it's a very long book, but I listened to it on Audible, and they did a lot of research and found that when you have a longer breath, you have a longer life, essentially. And if you can breathe, the ideal number of breaths per minute on average is 5.5 breaths per minute. So 5.5 inhales and exhales, which most people breathe a lot more often than 5.5 breaths per minute.
Yeah, I was thinking, because like with anxiety, you're not taking deep breaths, you're taking short breaths. And that's Absolutely. How like people end up a lot of times in panic attacks, and their breathing is it's totally dysregulated. Like that, like they cannot get control of that. And sometimes what I will, like my very first thing when I'm sitting with somebody that feels like they're slipping into that, it's, you do have control. You do. And the very first thing I have to go to, because it's life, is the breath. If I can calm the breath, if I can help them find the breath, then they find their own balance. It's like and so sometimes what I will tell people to do is, if you can lay down, if you can find the space to lay down. Now, granted, if you're somewhere public, and this is happening, because that can happen in a public space all the time.
For sure.
You can put either your hand, if you're at home and something triggers you, get a book, put it on your abdomen, and watch the book rise and fall. Concentrate on the book rising and falling, because your breath will begin to regulate if you're utilizing your abdomen. So if they're outside in like a public place, they can put your hand there. And I'm like, watch your hand go up and down. And just the focus of the hand starts to regulate the breath because their brain is watching their hand. It's okay, I got to watch my hand. It's the distraction of that. I don't know. What have
Mhm.
you utilized to teach people breath work?
It's so funny that you bring that up about the hand on the belly, because that's I had a pan I have gotten anxiety, like felt anxiety and felt episodes of like depression, but never super severe. I
Wow.
have had one anxiety attack, and I remember that moment of being like, "Oh my god, this is what people go through when they say they have a panic attack. This is wild." Like, I was on a very high building. It was in an apartment, and it was like it was in a city, and so I was near a window, and I was like, "Oh, I see why people like jump in these situations." The window, I wasn't going to do anything, but it was
Sure,
like a
sure, sure.
definitely some intrusive thoughts around suicide.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And
Absolutely.
it was a wild moment too, because I thought, oh my God, like I had so much empathy for people who had talked about this that I really never could relate. So I asked myself, what would I tell a client? What would I tell a student? And I put my hand, and the first answer I got was like, breathe. So I put my hand on my belly, and I didn't even try to change my breath. I just put my hand on my belly and just tried to feel my breath coming in and out.
Yeah.
And then I was able to calm down.
It's like that. It's in us. It's nature. Our bodies know how to calm down if we will allow the space for it. That's the key, is like teaching the space. Create the space, create the belief that you can just today in this moment. It's like what you do, like your 4 minutes a day. Like your 4 minutes
Hmm.
a day. You said that you created a website around it. You have a YouTube channel that you do this. It's you can do anything for a short period of time if you will allow it. It's just even if it's just like 1 minute right now. Like just
Hmm.
for 1 minute, I'm gonna breathe because anybody can survive 1 minute. And then, okay, I'm going to go to 2 minutes. That's why I loved how you said 5 minutes seemed too long. So I started with 4 minutes. It's like playing those mind games with yourself of what's to work, what's not to work. I had one panic attack when I was in high school. And that was an interesting one because I could get breath in, I couldn't expel it. It was very bizarre. And I remember it was at a very intense time. I was playing basketball, and it happened during a basketball game. I was very triggered by something that had gone on in the basketball game. And I had to crawl off the court. And my dad came down. My dad ran out of it. I looked at my dad and I was like, I need help. I mouthed it. And I didn't know what was going on, and nobody was coming to my rescue. Nobody was. It was this feeling of I'm going to die. I'm going to suffocate. And as soon as I saw my dad come down out of those bleachers, he's a chiropractor. He's retired now, but it was like something about him he adjusted me too. Cause he was like, okay, I'll adjust your neck. Cause he didn't know what was going on. He didn't, at that time, we didn't talk about panic attacks, right? It was like, oh, she can't breathe. I got to adjust her. I got to take care of her. So the adjustment was done and I could breathe, but I don't believe it was about the adjustment where I'm going with this. I believe it was about his touch, like his hands, like all of us kids in our family will tell you, like he's always said his hands, being a chiropractor, these hands are this is what I have. This is what I have. This is the gift I have to offer the world. And just his touch on my face. Are you okay? Like to go to grab my face. Are you okay? I got a breath in and I got a breath out. And I was like, I'm okay. Like just that comforting knowledge of I see you. I'm here for
Hmm.
you. You're safe. He was that safety. And then being able to breathe, it came back to the breath, but I could breathe when I knew that I was safe. And my dad created that energy space around me that you're safe. I've got you. And I
That's
trusted that my dad would
beautiful.
save my life. So I'm like, he's going
Exactly.
to save me. Everything's going to be fine. So yeah. So anxiety is a real thing. And I think breath work and meditation for anxiety, I think is so critical in also understanding that meditation does not have to look the way society has painted the picture of it. There's other alternative ways to meditate.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, and I think this leads to, I think it's really fascinating that you work with a particular population that you could speak to that I think would be very powerful in listeners knowing and understanding, because I'm sure anxiety lives amongst this population and maybe some depressions.
Just a little bit of anxiety in the prison system, a little bit of depression there, for
Yeah.
sure. So after I realized in that classroom that day with that student, then in that moment I knew, I thought, oh my God, I got to leave teaching art and go study this stuff, because I'm a teacher of art. So whatever I'm into, I just want to share with other people. Whatever I'm like learning about and that's helping me, I want to share that. And so in that moment, I realized how powerful meditation was. I literally shifted the energy of a room and had about 25 children feeling totally calm amidst a slightly chaotic moment. And then that little boy was able to go from being afraid to then just feeling the sadness that he was feeling, but was able to then articulate it. And for him to be able to feel the support and the connection of everybody else in that room without a word exchanged. And I think that when you talk about your dad, it's like a reminder that you're not alone. And it's one thing to hear it and your ego to say it, but it's a whole nother thing to feel it and be like, I'm not alone. And I think any listeners that are here that are like depressed or have a proclivity towards anxiety, you're not alone. And so these mindfulness practices can help tap into that connection to both to yourself that's within you, and then it comes out to connect to other people. And the other thing that meditation helps with is like being able to be vulnerable with other people. When you sent me these questions before this podcast, you sent me some questions about what does meditation help with, and I started listing some things, and I hesitated to even say this on, but intimacy. Like when you're in a relationship and you're having like, if you have intimacy like with your partner, like mindfulness is a huge part of that. And so if you're connected to your body, it's a totally different experience than if you're disconnected, thinking about something else, the past, the future, defensiveness. But when you're able to like be in the sometimes discomforts and then the other side of it, which is complete like bliss, the extreme, the depth of that experience is a lot further if you do practice some mindfulness. So there's another plug for meditation.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you bring that up about being like physically present and mindful of your body. And it also brings up the comment of, if you are a person listening that doesn't feel that connection, it's okay. Get curious about why. What is it about for you? Do you feel like you leave your body in times of intimacy? That's your body communicating with you. That's actually a beautiful thing, that you can stop and say, okay, I see that you're not connecting. Like being so kind to yourself in the process of that journey, because it can open you up into that intuition of why is there a disconnect between my heart center and my physical body and my ability to be intimate, whether it be with a partner or whether it be with myself. What does my self intimacy look like? And yeah, like that's such a great point that you bring up, because I don't think a lot of people consider meditation helping in that space. And we keep saying the word meditation. And what I love about this is we haven't yet said, let's sit with our legs crossed with our fingers touching. We've talked about meditation in every other way possible besides that.
Yeah.
You know, like I think too, like people that are like God-fearing, right? Deep, like that love God, that meditation can be prayer. It's, if you're going to pray to God, give him the time. And when you give him the time, you're technically giving you the time. It's not a quick, dear God, bless the food that we're eating. It's not, be intentional about your prayer to God, and that you can have that as your meditation. Be intentional to your higher power. If it's not God, it's whatever it is, just be intentional. If it's Mother Nature, if it's the universe, like prayer in your heart is a form of meditating.
Yeah. And I think prayer also is like almost when you speak to God, and meditation is when you listen.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. That sitting in that. Oh my gosh. I love that you just said that. See, this is why you're here. This is why, for these little comments.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Like sitting in the space.
Yeah. And be with it. So when you're praying, pray. Yeah, totally. Give gratitude, give thanks, speak to your ancestor, your mother, your grandpa. But then also you can listen. If you think they can hear you, then like you can hear them.
Oh, girl. Yes. Just receiving. What is it? And sitting in the wonder of that. That was what I thought was very powerful in my work with you, is that my whole reason in coming to you is that and I don't mind sharing this part at all, is that I was ready to experience more within my spirituality, or however I defined that. I came out of a very high demand religion. I transitioned away from Mormonism. So I had to really examine my blueprint, because the blueprint that I had laid out for me was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to examine that. And what was so interesting about this journey, and granted, this journey has been almost a decade long, right? So it's been time, and you were part of that journey. But it is like, I had this huge fear before I was leaving that I wouldn't be able to connect with God anymore. I wouldn't be able to connect with my higher power. And I was already getting that there was a feminine presence, and that's just my belief system. I'm not projecting that onto anybody. This is just mine. But I knew that I believed in a heavenly father, but I also felt that there was this feminine divine light that existed too. And I was on this hunt to identify with that. And I think that was me coming into my womanhood outside of an organized religion. And I went on this journey of just, when I left, it was like, are you still there? Is it true that you won't be there? Like, that space was like, oh, come, there's more. It was just like, I get a little teary eyed thinking about it, because I was so scared of what I was going to lose. I wasn't taught that I would gain. So when I gained this relationship with the divine in all the ways that I had imagined it could be, it was like, I craved more. I want to know more. I want to know more. I don't know. I can't articulate words to it, because I think that goes beyond the human experience. But that's how I started discovering with sound, like with tone and sound, that I could reach a non-ordinary state of consciousness with sound, taking my brainwaves to a certain state to where I could be, when you said like connecting with people, that's when I started connecting with something bigger. And I was like, oh, the sky is not the limit to what we can do when we sit in our intuition. When we sit, there's something so much bigger out there, and that thirst that I had. And that's why when I met you and I learned more about what you did, that intuitive nature that you have, I felt, first of all, feeling safe with you was huge. There was no way I was ever going to try anything more than like exploring that side of practice of reaching and connecting to that depth. There was no way I was just going to jump in the boat with anybody. There was no way. I didn't feel safe with that. And I still utilize that higher power to be like, is this okay? Is this step okay to take? And I trust myself. I think that's something else that we learn in a meditative space, is how to trust ourselves.
100%. I love that.
I'm going to trust that I can sit in this breath for 4 minutes, and I'm going to be kind to myself when my brain goes to the dishes that I haven't done. And I'm going to be kind to myself when I gently say, return to your breath. Just return. It's okay. Return to your breath. So that I immediately felt from your energy that it was like, this is a safe person that you can invite into your boat, so that we can paddle a little farther and you can learn more about you. And it was a great experience. We've done a couple sessions together, and it's been the second one was challenging, but I welcomed that challenge. And I think I was ready for that challenge. But I think there's something powerful in the work that you do, as far as allowing people, introducing this space of stillness. I really do believe that that's so much of what you do. So I chased a rabbit, or derailed you from talking about the prison system, because I think it comes
I love it. You just set it right up, though. That's it. That's what I'm bringing into the prison system, is like being in that stillness in a place that is really ridden with pain and darkness in a lot of ways. But there is also this light, because every human being has that light inside of them. And so when you're in a prison, there's that much more contrast and also clarity. And it's a beautiful thing. I work with kids in a detention center. So I work with 16, 17-year-olds. So they're at this phase of becoming adults, and they've already lived and done a lot in their life, but they're at this place of like, all right, now it's time to take responsibility for what you can do. And when I heard these stories about where they came from, when I first started working, and when I was working in the first 2B center I worked in, which was down in Brownsville, and I did it for a summer. before going to South America. So I fell into it as these things happen. I was hired to co-facilitate a painting of a mural in a juvie center in New York City. And so right after my mom died and then my friend died, that's where I was that summer before leaving for Peru. And when I talked, and at that point, I didn't even know when they said juvenile, there's one spot in a juvenile detention center. I was like, okay, great. Cause I was like, can you just put me in a place in Brooklyn? I'll paint these murals with these teenagers. They're like, yeah, there's one spot. It's in the juvie center. I was like, all right, that's okay. I didn't know what a juvie center was. I had to look it up. I was just like, I was totally ignorant to the whole system. And then I got, and they explained it and I was like, all right, I'll do that. They'll know what it's like to feel pain. They'll know what it's like to have lost somebody. And I learned more from that summer than it totally changed my life. And when I heard the stories of their life, and it's like what happened and what were some of the events that led up to what happened. And I would hear it and I thought, my goodness, I get why you did what you did.
Yeah.
I've never been forced to make the decisions. I've never been forced to given the choices that you were given. And so when you hear the choices laid out, I see why you're here.
Mm-hmm.
And so that sort of set the tone for that phase in my life. And then I left and I went to South America and I was ziplining because I was doing my yoga. I was going to do my yoga teacher training. And I said, oh, I got to go to Machu Picchu in Peru. So I found this like outdoorsy adventure thing that included whitewater rafting, zip lining. I'm like, perfect. I like to be outside and I'm afraid of heights.
So I'm gonna do all the things.
Perfect. I'll just do it all and get it done in one long weekend. And so I'm on this cliff in Peru in the jungle thinking, what in the world am I doing here? No one in my family, dad doesn't really know where I am. I texted him before I left. I was like, I'm going to the jungle. I'll be back in a few days. I'll let you know when I'm back. And I'll text you when I have Wi-Fi.
But I won't ever have Wi-Fi, so you'll never hear from me.
Exactly. I was like, you don't hear from me next week, it's a problem.
Oh my God.
And at that point, I'd already been meditating and connecting to some angels. So I was like, all right, I need some angels. And then there was nothing. There was just like darkness in the sky. It's not darkness. It was a beautiful blue day, but I just didn't feel any connection. So then when I hooked my zip line onto the line, I jumped off. And in the sky were two of the teenage boys that I worked with in the juvie center. They were actually my angels. And my feet land on the other end of the cliff. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to end up going to prisons and reminding these young men that they're actually walking angels.
Oh my gosh.
And then I thought, how am I ever going to get paid? I'm going to forget that. I was like, never mind. Just kidding. This seems like a really difficult problem. I don't think I can do this. And then I remember taking a few steps and it was like, no, Leah, you just had an awakening, enlightening moment. The universe has your back. This is not about you. This is about something much bigger. You're a conduit.
Yes.
Take one step at a time. Don't try to take care of it yourself. It's going to work out. And then that's what I did. I looked up like prison and yoga. And then I saw, once I came home 8 months later, it was like I did a yoga teacher training inside a prison, like a long weekend thing. And then within a few weeks had gotten an email, which was crazy. It was my sister's friend's mom who emailed her daughter, who emailed it to my sister, who emailed it to me and said, there's this opening at Ulster County Jail. They need a creative writing teacher. And she was like, I feel like Leah might be into this, but she had no idea like I was doing prison work really. So that's where the class began. I was inside of a jail and it was a creative writing course. And I said, I'll do it, creative writing, but I want to incorporate a little bit of mindful movement, yoga and meditation there. I said, yeah, sure. Do what you want. So then that's
make it, fill it in. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you were like their gift. Like they didn't even know like how fortunate they were.
Yeah, they were like, you don't need lessons plans. And I was like, I'm developing an entire curriculum.
You're like, I was a teacher. You're getting a curriculum.
I was literally like uploading everything to Google Docs. They were like, this is a little bit extra. I was like, this is far beyond. This is a thing. Yeah. And then that's yeah, exactly. So I'm in the jail, like in this small room with 8 of these guys that are sitting around in their orange, like jumpsuits, bright orange jumpsuits. And they're doing the writing part of the assignment. And so they're all writing pen to paper, just like furiously writing. And in that moment, it was like all the stars aligned and it clicked. And it was like, this is happening. There's magic happening right here. And the magic you can make inside of prisons, the creativity that exists in there, and like the leadership, the potential of like leaders, of giving them that fertilizer to expand and bring those practices that and their art and their gift out into the world when they get out of prison is just, it's incredible.
I think about, I know you're making a difference in their life. I know it. So it's like, what a gift to be able to, and what an opportunity, because at the same time, like, you can have all of those individuals in a room and they still have to make the choice of whether they practice. So it's, am I going to practice this? Am I going to be intentional about this? And how they can develop that intuitive knowledge about themselves before they go back out into the world and try to integrate back in, because integration is so hard when you leave the prison system and then go back into the world. That is a difficult transition. And if you can have that, if you can have developed knowing how to sit in stillness for a second, tapping into your intuitive divine worth and divine purpose and divine heart, and being able to carry that with you, that's something nobody can take away from you. The only way that ever goes away is if you choose to believe the stories man writes about you. And choosing not to believe those narratives about yourself. Yeah, you just came out of the prison system, whatever. It's, shouldn't say whatever. It's, you came out of the prison system. Yes, you have a story. I'm gonna reword it like that. You have a story, and it's probably gonna be a beautiful story.
Yeah. And you can use that strength that you have learned and the wisdom and in your life.
Yes.
And it's a captive audience. They're not on their phones.
Yeah.
And their backs against the wall. Like, I'm open to something. Like, and the thing is, their behavior has to change for them to not be back recycled through the system. So it's a group of people that are like, all right, I low-key have to change something. And the only way we can change our behavior is to actually change the way we're thinking. And we can only change our thinking when we notice that we're thinking. And that's where mindfulness comes in, of just like noticing the thoughts. Like, what am I thinking right now? And is that serving? If I keep thinking that, who is the kind of person that thinks that? Who am I being when I think that? And what am I getting by being that person? And is that what I want to be getting? Is that how I want to be living? And if it is, great. If it's not, then you go back to, who can I be to have the things that I want to have so I can do the things I want to do?
So true. It's so true. And even when you get out, if you don't have a support system, you've at least learned that I have me. And right now, me is enough right now until I can expand my village. So I can gather people around me that I also feel safe with and that I also will allow into my heart.
Absolutely. And if they elevate when you elevate your vibration, energy is everything. And people want to be like, I don't believe in vibrations. Like, it's physics. Albert Einstein talked about that. Like, it's not philosophy, it's physics, and everything is energy. We're all made out of these vibrating fields. When they are able to, and any of us able to elevate our vibration, and then we put ourselves in situations where we're going to connect to other people, go out, meet people, go to new rooms, go to new places, and not numb the discomfort when you're there, not just be like, all right, I'm going to go to a new place and then drink alcohol so I can have that lubricant, but actually be in the discomfort and be able to be okay with that and use that as an opportunity to be courageous and meet new people. Then you'll be able to attract who you're meant to attract.
Yes.
So it's really just elevate your vibration, have the vision of what you want, elevate your vibration, and take action, small action steps towards, and listen to your intuition as you're doing it. And you will connect to who you're supposed to connect to.
Yes. Yes.
That will help you.
What would you say to somebody that does not know? Because you and I were talking about this before. It's like trying to explain to somebody that's never felt intuition, or never, like, they've felt their gut before. Because when we're born, we have these instincts, right? They've felt the gut before, but over time and over experience and over life happening, the gut either gets acknowledged and fed, or it gets pushed aside or denied or whatever may happen. So it's, if somebody doesn't know what the gut feeling is, that we say the gut feeling, it's like, how would you describe that to somebody how would you describe salt to somebody that's never tasted it?
I would say a lot of the people that have asked me that, it's different for like each person. I would say it's like a slightly different answer. But my go-to is usually, did you ever feel like you thought about someone and then they called you.
Yeah.
You thought about a song that you hadn't heard in a while and then you heard it on the radio.
Mhm.
You were supposed to go to this event and you just kept hearing this voice of, don't go. It's not a good idea to go. And you went
Yes.
and you're like, I probably shouldn't have gone.
Yes. Yes.
Or an event that you're like, I don't really want, like your ego is don't go, but your intuition you should go. And then you
Yeah.
go and you're so glad you did.
Yes.
And I think that's that. And then it's just the more you listen to that voice, the louder it gets. And then
Yeah.
so it's just a practice of, you don't just take magic drops and then all of a sudden the intuition is loud as hell. It's a practice of acknowledging it, because when the spirit or intuition is, or your gut is talking to you or communicating with you, if you listen, all right,
Yeah.
game on.
Yeah.
You'll keep getting messages.
Yes. Yes. And even if it doesn't work out as you thought it did, you can at least look back and say, I listened to it. There was a reason why this was supposed to happen, even though my expectations didn't pan out as what I thought, what I was expecting. It is like turning up the volume on something, like really like honing the skill of listening to your intuition. And that also, it reminds me of what it was like to step into those shoes when I left Mormonism, because it was like, okay, I think I know what it sounds like, because I remember them telling me like, it's the spirit, and then realizing that when I stepped away from it and transitioned away, it was like, oh, I still hear that. Oh, that's my heart led by this amazing power bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like being a child again, learning something new, because I was like, okay, my gut says this, or a part of me says this, and I would learn this. And then if I didn't listen, if I was like, I didn't listen and something happened, it was like, oh, like I was so kind to myself, because it was like learning language. Like it was like,
I
okay,
love that.
as if I was trying to learn Spanish right now. Like I can understand it, but I couldn't have a conversation if I tried. So it would be almost like everybody's bilingual once they technically learn what their intuition sounds like.
Yeah.
Because
I
it's a
love that.
language. It's a
It totally
language
is.
that you speak.
And the more you can listen to your own intuition, the more you're able to hear other people's and hear underneath what they're saying.
Yeah.
So then when you hear somebody say something, there's almost like you can also like sense the subtext. So then which is great, especially when your ego wants to get defensive about what they're saying. And if you can then hear the subtext of, oh man, they just are afraid of being abandoned. Their feelings are hurt.
Yes. When you don't internalize that as your own, like
Yeah.
when whatever's coming at you and you can feel the energy is off, like you can feel, like, I'm so glad you mentioned like the physics thing, because it's like, we all have vibration. We all do. The best way, I'm going to give this example and I'm going to come back to this, because the best way I can describe vibration to somebody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, because sometimes that sounds like a foreign language, is I will tell people, have you ever been in a deep sleep? And especially parents, for me, if I may not hear one of my kids come in, but they get just close enough to me and I wake up and they're standing right over me. And I'm like, why are you right over me like that? Stop it. My adrenaline is, I would have died. Somebody else. Like they enter the vibration. Their vibration bumps into yours. That is the best way I can describe it. Because why else would you wake up like out of nowhere? Hi, what do you need? Oh, and I've had my kids say to me, I purposely didn't touch you and I didn't say anything because I couldn't decide if I wanted to wake you up or not. They don't say anything. They don't touch me. I just wake up. And that is the only way that I can put any logic to it, is that my vibration is asleep. So it's just, maybe it's lower. I don't know if it would be a high or a low thing. And they are coming up because either they've had a nightmare or they're scared. So their vibration is sitting at a different frequency. And those two hit. And then I'm awake.
Yep.
But that's the best way I can describe like a vibration of some sort and how it happens.
Yeah. Like that. Yeah. I love that. Another way of, and I love that idea of connecting vibrations, because you have to be if we're not on the same vibration, generally it feels like static. So then you just sound like you're in between two radio stations.
Yeah.
So if you have two different people that are just trying to communicate, but you're not on the same wavelength, it's just chaotic. And just, so
You
I've
know
had this conversation.
when
Yeah,
it's not.
you feel like when it's right because you're able to communicate more clearly.
And I think it's really good that we're talking about this, because I think that so many people have been in this place and they're like, and they can put a name to it. Oh, that's what it could be, is like our vibration is off.
Yeah.
And that
I
happens.
have
Go ahead.
had this conversation with my partner sometimes where I'm like, I don't want to have a low vibration. So you need to elevate your vibration because I'm not going that far down. And I've said it like enough times that now it's like a very small, I'm like,
Going
babe,
down
turn
there.
the dial up. Like it's got to go up because
So funny. I usually say to mine, like, the energy's off. Like, I'm feeling it's off. No. I can feel it's off. And really, sometimes I can get pretty annoying, because I will say, like, the energy is, I'm always using energy. And they're like, bits and pieces of my family members are like, energy's off. And I'm like, no, but seriously, like, I can feel it.
yeah,
I know that it's off.
yeah, it's
And
beautiful.
I have my kids too will voice it in a different way. Like, they'll just be like, I feel off about this. And I'm like, and I will tell them when they say something like that, I will take a moment to acknowledge it. If it's a child that doesn't mind being touched, like one of my kids embraces that, it's like,
Yeah.
I'll hold them on their cheeks and I'll say, look at mommy for a second. Look at my eyes. And I just get in, like, our eyes meet, and I'm like, that is so powerful that you could feel that. And it's yours. Don't give it up. Don't compromise it. Like, in those moments. And then I say, okay, what didn't you feel good about? Let's talk about it. But I make sure that I capture that moment for them, that they own that. That is theirs. Nobody else gets to hijack that.
Love that.
Oh,
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Yeah. And it's uncomfortable. So sometimes when a lot of the people, I think that's one of the reasons I like working in prisons because there's so many people that are empathic and there's a lot of creativity because, and sitting through school, like math and science wasn't, I would say more like writing and reading and the standard sit in a desk, rote memorization wasn't their jam because they had whether either an artist, a musician, a dancer. So the kids that I worked with in the elementary schools, the kids that had the wildest behavior always had the best art. I remember when we had a kid come in and they were like, his behavior's off the chain. And all I could think was, I cannot wait to see how he draws.
Oh, I love that about you. I
And I
love
remember,
not, oh, really? What? You're like, I can't
I was
wait.
like, bring them in. And would have these kids that there's some kids that would have a lot of hard time. There was a couple of kids that just knew they could always come in with their teacher aide or whatever. They'd come in and do some artwork. And it was better artwork than the artwork I was paying to see on the weekends. But they're in second grade.
Express themselves. It's such a
Yeah.
good way. We do that in integration work. It's get out what the body wants to get out. And we can do that through art and dance and fluid body movement. And like, just creating fluidity through the body and movement is powerful too. Like, there's just, I don't know. I think this space in us, we could talk about this for hours, but this space is just, so there's a term that comes to mind, and it's the best way I can label it, but it's my label and I don't want anybody else to feel like I'm projecting it, but it's like, it feels very reverent to me. There's a reverence that's there when you can respect this gift of intuition that every single soul on this earth has.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. So one of the things I do at the end of these classes at the prisons, I do a little Reiki, which is distant. I stay on my yoga mat. They're all laying out in Shavasana at the end, relax after doing yoga, meditation, and a little bit of writing. And the music is playing. It's like chill, like kind of the kind of music that's really soothing. And I ask them, I do energy works and I receive messages. So and I write them down. So I'll give a couple minutes, 2 minutes or so for each student. If you want to receive it, let me know. If not, totally fine.
Yeah.
And I do this and write the messages down, which has been incredibly transformative for them. And one of them, I'll give an example. I did this last week in a facility. And one of them, I had never met before. He came into the class. He had never done a class before. And so at the end, I got the message for him to write stories and do a little bit of drawing. And I said, actually do like a comic strip type of book. And his face lights up and he's smiling and nodding his head. I go, did you already start it? He said, yes. I said,
Oh
when?
my gosh.
It was 2 weeks ago. I said, has anyone else here seen it? He goes, no. Like looking at me like, how the F did you know that I started my comic book 2 weeks ago when we never talked about any of this stuff?
Yeah.
I said, keep working on it. And so just these little things of validating that they're being watched, we're all being watched, and that there's forces at play that are much bigger than us. But when you get that voice inside that's just do this one little thing, do this thing, that voice that's keep nagging you of whatever it is.
Yeah.
Start working on projects. I don't know how it's going to turn out. Just, it doesn't matter. Just start.
Yeah.
Just to listen to that voice.
Yeah.
And I think that's been really powerful inside of the facilities that I've been doing. That's because it's validating that intuition inside of that they're already hearing. And even when I work with one-on-one with clients, when I do the remote Reiki with clients one-on-one and the readings, and it's really just reverberating that intuition.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just crazy that it's weird that I'm not weird, but it's unusual that I'm able to know it because I don't know it as Leah. I just hear the messages and I'm just a conduit.
Yeah. And that I think that it's not a forced thing. Like you can take or leave whatever anybody brings to you. Like you could literally it's like being in church and somebody comes to you and says, hey, I was praying over you, or, hey, I got this message, or, hey, you get to choose whether you take that or leave that message like that. Like nobody is in control of you absorbing any of that. So it's feel what it feels like. It's that gut thing again. It's listen, hear, what comes up in your body. Pay attention in your body. Do you feel to receive this, or do you feel to let it just drift into the next space where it may help somebody else? Like it is just, you get the choice. It always comes down to that. And I think that's where we acknowledge our humanness and all the work that we do, and just being another puzzle piece in order to returning to ourselves. And that's like what this podcast was all about. That's why I started this podcast, is I just wanted to bring in people that we could talk about things that I wanted to create chatter around this. I wanted to create about what it means to return home to yourself, because so many of us have these experiences of where we're putting ourselves on the back burner, or we're giving and not receiving anything. Our buckets are empty, we're checking out of our emotions. We're numbing things away. We are doing everything about leaving ourselves. None of that has receiving energy. All of that has escaping energy. So it's like, how do we
say that again?
None of it has receiving energy. When we do that, we're not setting ourselves up to receive, we're setting ourselves up to escape. And it's your bodies, all of our bodies are miraculous capsules that our soul experiences, right? Like I like to believe that our soul is having a human journey right now, a human experience. It's like and what it's like to when I watch a newborn baby like play on the floor and their arms are everywhere. And yeah, there's a medical term. It's like they haven't learned their whatever. I also look at that and I'm like, oh, they are stretching. They are feeling their limbs. They're experiencing this body for the first time. I don't know. But I also know too that I love to get lost in the wonder of all of that, because nobody can tell me that it doesn't exist. That power out there, that energy, the vibration, nobody can tell me that it doesn't exist. And I think there's something magical about that.
Yeah.
It's almost like an untouchable space. And I'm like, oh, don't touch that space of mine. No, I keep spitting everywhere. I don't know why I keep doing that, but I don't know. It's just, it's magical to me. And I want to talk about it so that people can just do this, just open an ear. Like nobody's forcing this information on anybody. Just getting curious about.
And it comes when you're ready. You know how this stuff comes? Like you see the book and you're like, that's weird. That book is calling me. I don't know why. I can ignore it. But then 2 months later, someone's, hey, you should really read this book. I just got this. And it's that book. And you're like, all right, fine, I'll read it. So you read the book. And so everybody has their entry point for this work. And sometimes it's like a really traumatic event.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's ultimately what sometimes brings people to the knees in saying, I need something else because this isn't working. That was what was the impetus for me.
Yeah. That's how I got into Fluence, the school how we met. I was working with addicts, with people that struggle with addiction. And somebody brought psychedelics up. And I was like, no, I'm trying to get people off drugs, because clearly I did not understand. I was not educated in the area. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so that was one time it passed through my space, my energy field passes through. And then I'm at my house one day and I get a flyer from PESI. That's like a training hub for therapists.
Mm-hmm.
Psychedelic harm reduction and integration, or something like that. And I'm like, what? So now my ears are open. I'm like this. Okay, I see it. Odd. So I'm like, it's free. Okay. It was a free 2 days. And it was through Fluence. It was their premise and promise. They were offering through Psychology Networker or something, and PESI put it up. So I was like, well, if it's free and I don't have to invest, then I'll bite. So I bite. And then
investing your time in something, though.
Yes, no, that's true.
Investing your time in something.
That. It was 2 days. It was a weekend. So yes, you're absolutely right. I did invest.
That's an investment.
And then they started showing all the data on PTSD with combat veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally remember being like, okay, because I love working with military. Like I'm in Military City in San Antonio. My dad is a veteran. It's interesting how that energy has brought me down the river, because it's okay. I wanted to work with a certain population before I got into grad school. And then I started working in the field of addiction, just through this knowledge that I got in the class of, okay, this is the population that I think I really actually like. I think I'm actually going to enjoy this, because I wanted to work. I really did want to focus on something that fed me too.
Mm-hmm.
So I started down that journey. And while I was working at a treatment center, I started meeting military individuals that were struggling with PTSD and addiction is very high. It's very high.
Oh yeah.
So then it was like, oh, okay, now I got this pocket. So in an ideal world, yes, I would strictly, but I work with mixed population and I've enjoyed all of it. I'm happy with it. But that was the third. And I was like, okay, I'll bite. So my whole why of starting the PHRI program, which is the psychedelic harm reduction and integration work that I've been doing the last year, a little over a year through Fluence. It's the school this is how Leah and I met. Through all that, I wait in hopes that over time laws will change and that we will be able to utilize plants to be able to help people with their PTSD experiences, but we just have to be patient and wait on the law. Right now we have ketamine. But that's how I ended up, same type of situation, how I ended up in this space doing what I'm doing. And if you allow the universe or your higher power or the divine to guide, and yet being at home with yourself, you will know when this one isn't right for me, even though it's so enticing. This one may seem like a challenge, but I think this is the direction. Like just being able to sit within yourself and say, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm brave enough to try.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But
I think that you're really hitting on something, because I was thinking about that before, that I think it's important to know that your intuition is not telling you to do something that's always so easy. It's often going to be scary. And it's often only something that's showing you like what's the next one step, next 2 steps. But that 6 steps down the way, you're not going to be able to see it.
yes,
you can't. Like if you're getting messages around like a vision bigger than you, know that you're not going to be able to control the whole thing. And with this whole work in the prison system, I really had to learn that. There was a lot of white knuckling, and like seeing the vision and like, all right, I'm going to try to do it this way. And then the more I'm taking my hands off the wheel a little bit, the quicker things are expedited in terms of spreading it, in growing in different ways. Like the more I remind myself, it's not about you. This is about a much bigger system, and not like the prison system, but like a much bigger, like all around system. And that you're part of something, that you're a part of a wave. So ride it. Stop trying to like control it.
Yeah.
And enjoy it. Like this is an opportunity for you to learn your karmic lessons through, it just happens to be through this particular project.
Yeah. It's these little portals that we get to jump through for time. and see what portal it
Totally.
takes us to next. And I think that's why I have a passion to just continue to talk about this type of stuff, because I do believe it's like, when I talk about it, my heart gets excited. There's a part of me, right? So that's like another thing that I focus on, is which parts of me are active at what time. And right
Like
now,
that.
doing this interview with you, there's a part of me that it's the part that I met when I was doing the retreat with y'all. For 6 days, we meditated. We had 24 hours of silence where we didn't use any language at all. We couldn't communicate with other people. We couldn't write. We couldn't listen to music. It was like the day that I met this deep version of myself that I don't know that I think I had talked to you about this, and I had even taken a picture of myself, because it was like this. I was like, who is this? It was this part of me I need you to be still for periods of time longer than 2 minutes. Please show up in your subconscious with me at the beach, wherever you need to be. Show up and be still, because that's how I live. That's how I survive.
Mm.
I don't live in that space every waking moment of my life. I can't, because then there's
Mhm.
parts of me that needs to be a mom, and there's parts of me that needs to be a therapist, and there's parts of me that needs to be a partner, and there's parts of me that needs to be a daughter, a sibling, a cousin, whatever it is. But that's one thing that I learned in those 6 days of sitting in quiet and silence and learning all about integration work, is that I have to return to her. I have to return to heart center, or I am not getting the deepest depths of me.
Mhm.
And I think that whatever it takes for each person out there listening, everybody's journey is going to be different of how you reach within yourself. It's going to look different. And your approaches to reaching that is going to look different. We don't cast judgment on people that do it different than us. This is our own personal journey. When you make it your own personal journey, nobody can take it away from you.
Mhm.
You don't attach it to any person. You don't attach it to any product, it's yours.
Absolutely.
Any final thoughts that you might have?
I would say if anybody wants to like further develop their intuition, just play with it, test it.
Mhm.
But like just, be aware of it. If you can meditate, and sitting or standing or just taking some breaths where you're mindfully aware of it will help you witness your thoughts a bit more, so that when you're moving through your day, you're able to see them a little bit more clearly. But I would say testing your intuition, even like little things, like when it's useful, go in your car, you're about to leave, and you hear that little voice that you forgot something, but you can't remember what you forgot.
Mhm.
Just go back into the house
Mhm.
for a second and just see if it'll come through.
Yep.
You're thinking of somebody, call them, text them, reach out.
Yep.
You're getting a pull. There's a reason you're getting that
Pull.
pull.
There's
So
that
just
that is Yep. That's what
it's
you were
an
talking
energetic pull, which is like you're talking about with your kids. So just test it, play with it,
about.
and set intentions. I have a great time with setting intentions. I do it sometimes via journaling, but set intentions for a meeting, set intentions for a day, set intention for what something that you're about to do, that you want to bring about something from this experience of what you want to feel.
Yes. And checking your expectation of what it's going to look like. Sometimes we can have really lofty expectations and then be really disappointed, when really the whole point of this energetic pull was for a purpose. And we miss the purpose because we drown in our expectations of what this is going to turn out. And when really it could just simply be the same thing as, oh, I feel like I forgot something. Let me walk in, and you walk in and it's, oh, so it might not even be anything you've forgotten. You just walk in and something happens, or and you're like, that's why it's just, I think it's good. I think that's a good piece to leave off on, is that just ex- explore your intuition with so much curiosity, compassion, and love for yourself.
100, that's it.
You know,
Curiosity, compassion, and love for yourself, and have fun with it. This is temporary.
no,
We're only here for a little bit. We're only here for a little bit. This is incredible that we're doing this thing. We're human. You're human. You're listening to a podcast.
yeah,
This is
yes,
wild that we're here and
yes.
doing this.
Think about all the physics that has to shift outside of you in order to be able to literally hear it. literally feel what we're saying, whether they agree, whether people agree or disagree. That's the other beauty of this, is you can disagree with what we've said all day long. That's your space. That's your intuition. You get to follow it. That's, yeah, I think that's what we're all here for. And being able to contribute our gifts in the ways that we can,
Absolutely.
you know?
And that's what it comes down to, is that's what I encourage. It's like all of this is in service of you getting those lights on and being like, what is your gift, and bring it about. And know that you, in keeping that strength and knowing that you have that support and that connection with other people, other communities the entire time, and that you are connected to something much bigger than just you. And so reach out when you want help, when you need help, and
Yeah.
listen to that inner voice.
Wow. Thank you for being here.